Who are the top 10 Dynasty wide receivers right now? All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Welcome to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, how's it going?
It's going well, man. How are you?
Going well. It's midweek. It's our favorite episode. We're talking player value. Last week, Matt, we talked about the brand new October ADP from Dynasty League Football. We looked at the quarterbacks and running backs. And remember, we had some massive changes at the running back position, especially kind of the old guard being shuffled out with some new guys moving up the ranks. Matt, wait until you hear about these wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm excited.
It's going to be a shock to the system for sure.
Okay.
Let's get right into it, though. We're talking wide receiver ADP. Again, these are this ADP data is pulled from mock drafts that we do every single month, including the regular season. We start them at the very beginning of the month. So all of these were started the 1st of October. So essentially right before week 4 began. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. As we always say, you can have your favorite among those two. I think they're clearly the top 2 options, sure, with really no one to even threaten either guy. Let's move on to number 3 because you mentioned it before we even came on the air. You got a little sneak peek.
One quick note, though, is I really think the teams that face the Bengals are going way out of their way to take away Chase this year. I mean, it's just something to keep an eye on. I mean, they're far and away the top 2. I just would put Jefferson slightly over Chase because I think the Bengals are struggling to adapt to all the attention he's getting a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. I know T. Higgins missed most of that week 5 game, but entering week 5, the splits between Higgins and Chase were not very different at all. So, I get that for sure. Chase and Jefferson, top 2 guys. Wide receiver 3, Amon-Ra St. Brown, second-year player for the Detroit Lions. Of course, had that record going of how many 8-catch games, I believe was the record. How many consecutive 8-catch games he had dating back to last year. Did not break that record. That was the game that he suffered the injury. So that was week 4. You could certainly argue that over the past 2 weeks, he's lost a little bit of value, missed week 4, week 5 came back and they eased him back into the lineup. Let's say that played just about 20 snaps and we haven't seen him back at full strength yet. I mean, I think even including that the start to his season, I think this is a little too much too quickly for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think he's 8-ish, not 3.
Okay,
I understand. Yeah,
I was going to ask if you thought he belonged on this list. We're going to talk about the top 10 guys from this Dynasty ADP. You think he's the top 10 Dynasty wide receiver at this point? Yes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the top 10, and I think he's in that 9-10 neighborhood. We'll get to those names later, but I don't think he approaches Chase or Jefferson and just is – I know he's a really good player, but he's not the talent of a DK Metcalf, AJ Brown. He's just not freaky enough for me to be number 3.
Okay, that's fair. I think he's a little too high as well. I would have him, I think, 5 at the highest at this point.
Okay.
Number 4, wide receiver 4 is A.J. Brown. There were a lot of questions about him this offseason. Of course, the new situation being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. I know he was kind of held in check in week 5, but overall, I think the results have been very good for Brown, certainly very good for Jalen Hurts and that entire Eagles offense, the last undefeated team in the league. AJ Brown would be my wide receiver 3 at this point in my own rankings.
Me too. And but stand alone. I mean, unchallenged as number 3 right now.
Yeah, I think I would agree. He's clearly the third. I don't think he's necessarily close to the top 2 guys, but I'm not sure anybody is pushing him for that wide receiver 3 spot either. Wide receiver 5, last guy we'll talk about in this segment, Jalen Waddle. Of course, he got off to the huge start as well. What was it? Was it week 2? Yeah, I think it was week 2, the Ravens and Dolphins game when everybody went off. Everybody had a monster game. Tua, Waddle, Tyreek, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman. They all did it in that week 2 slugfest, and Waddle's value got pushed up not only as a result of that, but that certainly helped. He's had a couple quiet games over the past 2 or 3 weeks as well. Are you good with Waddle being ranked this highly, Matt?
I think so. I trust the coaching staff. I trust his talent, the usage. Tyreek being on the other side, I think is a good thing all in all. The quarterback situation lately has been a little bizarre, obviously, but I think that works itself out, whether it's Bridgewater or Tua.
Do you have any hesitation with Waddle being valued ahead of Tyreek Hill?
No, I'm cool with that.
Obvious age gap there. You're getting 5 or 6 years, not that much, 4 or 5 years with the move down to Jalen Waddle from Tyreek Hill. So those are your top 5 dynasty wide receivers, all young guys: Chase, Jefferson, St. Brown, A.J. Brown, and Jalen Waddle. Those are your top 5. We'll cover 6 through 10 right after this.
Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's been great for me. I was never one for therapy, and this became available through the Locked On Network, and I kind of brushed it off originally and then decided, why not? I mean, if you can help yourself in any way, why wouldn't you? And instead of internalizing things or not bringing things up, now it gives me someone to talk to, a great therapist out there. So it's been great for me. One thing I noticed is I often got stuck focusing on problems instead of solutions, and figured, how might that situation go better if I had a different mindset towards it all. And the folks at BetterHelp have been great about that, as opposed to looking at, what's going wrong, try to figure out why. So again, I think everybody should try this. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a fantastic option. It's extremely convenient, accessible, affordable. Everything's entirely online. You don't have to go anywhere. Get matched with a therapist after filling out a brief survey, and switch therapists at any time. So here's what you got to do. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon.
Thanks again for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Make sure you check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts, Bet Online. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Matt, we're taking a look at our brand new Dynasty ADP for the month of October. That comes from dynastyleaguefootball.com. And we're talking wide receivers: Chase, Jefferson, St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle are the top 5. Let's look at 6 through 10 now. Cooper Kupp is wide receiver 6. I discounted Cooper Kupp a little bit this offseason.
Yeah.
And my mindset was he's coming off the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest wide receiver season we've ever seen, not just from a statistical standpoint, but he, of course, his team wins the Super Bowl. He's the Super Bowl MVP. He really did it all last year. And my thinking was he can't do it again. He can't repeat that. Yeah. Well, he's not repeating that. He's doing even better. He's outperforming. He's outperforming those numbers from a year ago, at least through 5 weeks. It really is amazing. And that's, this is a team that is not, certainly does not look as strong as they did a year ago, which just tells me they're going to be in closer games. They're going to have to throw the ball more. And we might continue to see Kupp rack up these crazy numbers. Not to mention, Van Jefferson's missed essentially the whole season. Allen Robinson feels like he's missed the whole season. Yeah, he's a non-factor. It's really just Cooper Kupp and whatever they get from Tyler Higbee. So I think he's going to be able to keep this up as long as he stays on the field. This is the tough spot. We pointed out with those top 5 guys, they're all young. They're in their first, second, or third year. And Cooper Kupp's a veteran. We've seen the value of these guys drop even when they continue to produce. Matt, how do you value Cooper Kupp against some of these young guys who are in some cases 5 or 6 years younger than he is?
Yeah, what he's doing is utterly amazing, and it absolutely is, because his circumstances have changed, as you mentioned, in that their O-line is horrific. Their running game is horrific. The quarterback play is not as good as last year. We'll just say that. And it seems like everyone in the stadium knows that the whole offense is Cooper Kupp. You would think they'd put 5 guys on him, and he still gets open like every snap. It's not a fluke. It's unbelievable. He would be my 6. The name we're going to bring up next, I have ahead of him, but I have Kupp over St. Brown.
Okay. CeeDee Lamb is the wide receiver 7. That was the name you were alluding to. We saw him lose some value from the offseason after a slow start, after the injury to Dak Prescott. And while that offense is still probably not what we thought it would be, it's been good enough, right? They've been winning games, and CeeDee Lamb has been the center point of that offense as I think we probably hoped he would be. So he fell off. He was kind of that consensus wide receiver 3, really the wide receiver 3 by default most of the offseason, and got bypassed by some of these others to start the year. I think he's back in the mix. If he's not the wide receiver 3, we both agreed that was AJ Brown in our own rankings. If he's not 3, he's probably 4. He's 4, 5, or 6. I would say he's in that range. Stephon Diggs, another veteran, is the wide receiver 8. He's obviously off to another great start as well. And to me, he kind of gets lumped in with Cooper Kupp. And, you could throw Tyreek Hill, a name we've already mentioned, in that group as well, that you kind of know what you're going to get. They're going to produce. They're going to give you that consistent production. But we also know the value is just not quite the same as it is with these young guys who have 8 or 10 years ahead of them.
100%. He's a great player and a great offense, though. This is exactly where I'd have him ranked, right behind Kupp, ahead of Tyreek, ahead of Devontae Adams. All those guys are, give or take, the same age, same experience. I trust Diggs' situation a great deal. The quarterback he has thrown to him is a remarkable football player, and that sure helps. I think this is a proper spot for him.
Last 2 guys on the list that we'll talk about today are maybe a couple of surprises. Wide receiver 9 is Drake London, the rookie for the Falcons. Another player who started off the season and his career really well. And we've hit a couple of slow weeks for Drake London.
They don't throw the football.
Right. If we do these, if we did these mocks again right now, and we will do them here in just a few weeks for our November data, I think London would probably be lower on the list already, just based on the past couple weeks. And, there was this frustration with how the Falcons have been using Kyle Pitts. Well, then Sunday in
Right.
week 5, Kyle Pitts is out, and it feels like, well, they've got to use Drake London, right? He's really the only guy they have, and he played the fewest amount of snaps, or the smallest percentage of snaps that he's played in any game this year. It just doesn't make sense how they're using these pass catchers. You would think Pitts and London would be getting peppered with targets, and obviously that has not been the case. I think
the problem is they're competitive in all these games. So whatever they're doing is making them almost win games despite not having any talent on their team. So it's not going to stop until they start getting blown out.
Yeah, exactly. Us fantasy nerds are complaining about Pitts not performing and not seeing targets, and the snap percentage dropping for Pitts and London. But the reality is, as you said, they're staying in games and they're winning games they weren't expected to. So
why would they stop?
Exactly. This is not going to change. And there's, we talked about the Carolina situation yesterday. We're not even close to that as far as the coaching change or something.
No, he's doing a good job.
Right.
Which, not good for us.
Michael Pittman.
I don't think London would be in my top 10.
No, I got pretty aggressive with moving him up my rankings as well. Probably worth another look. If for no other reason, then there's so much depth. I mean, we'll talk about this last guy, and then we'll throw out a couple names who are not in the top 10. And again, from
this offense is broken, by the way.
I mean, from 9 to 20 is all pretty close. Wide receiver 10, though, is Michael Pittman, another player who started the season well and has kind of fallen off. He suffered an injury that caused him to miss some time. And Matt, as you said, the offense just looks horrible. Jonathan Taylor can't produce. Michael Pittman can't produce. I do think this is a team that it's not if, it's when they lose again, I think we could see a coaching change. I think we could see Frank Reich gone. And, you hate to say it when you're talking about someone's livelihood, but I think that would be good news for Pittman, for Taylor, and for fantasy managers.
A left tackle that could block anyone would help as well, and a quarterback that wasn't total dust would help as well too. I mean, it's a bad situation. Unwatchable.
So those are your top 10 guys. Just throwing out some names that are that didn't crack the top 10, but are certainly worthy of being in the conversation. Deebo Samuel, T. Higgins.
I'd have those guys over the last two.
Yeah, we talked about Tyreek Hill, but we didn't have him in the top 10. I guess I just feel like if Diggs is there, Tyreek should probably be there as well. Garrett Wilson.
I thought if Deebo maybe like at 6. I mean, I think he's a great player.
Garrett Wilson, another rookie who is in this mix. I don't think he necessarily is a top 10 guy, but again, if London's in the conversation, maybe Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave should be as well. And then DK Metcalf, a name you threw out, continues to perform well, even with the perceived drop-off at quarterback. The
better situation last year.
Yeah, really another crazy situation. We hadn't talked about that Seahawks team too much, but Geno Smith certainly has that offense rolling in most games. Matt, when we come back, we'll switch over to the tight end position and look at the top 10 dynasty tight ends, according to our latest ADP.
Guys, betonline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season, and it's the only place I go. They've got podcasts, in-depth articles, analysis on every game, matchups, latest player developments is wonderful. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. I mean, golf, boxing, MMA, baseball playoffs, of course, football, NBA's coming around, and hockey's coming back soon. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite games and events. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Matt, let's finish up our Dynasty ADP conversation with the tight end position. Tight end 1 in Dynasty, still Kyle Pitts.
We just talked about this team and passing
game,
and now he's injured.
Right. I mean, I know how young he is. He just turned 22 years old, or is about to turn 22 years old. So still super young. I get the upside. I just see Mark Andrews, who's not an old guy himself, right? I mean,
tearing it up.
He's not, his career's not near the end, like maybe some of these other guys. Just dominating. I mean, the number one option in one of the best offenses in the league with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. We can't say any of those things about Kyle Pitts.
No. Don't even know his quarterbacks will be next year.
I just have a hard time valuing Pitts ahead of Andrews at this point.
Yeah, I think I'm there. I think the last time we had this conversation, we talked about Andrews being a easy first round startup pick. Now I think he's the tight end 1. And Pitts wouldn't have to do much to take that over. A couple good games and some great usage. I'd be right back on because I think he's that freaky. But Andrews does it every week and is a difference maker where Pitts is hurting your team.
Well, I think these two, and of course, Mark Andrews is the tight end 2 here. Mm-hmm. I think these two are clearly, from a dynasty standpoint, the top 2 options, right?
Because of age and, Kelsey.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So maybe the more important question is, how do you value them compared to other positions, right? We just talked about the wide receivers, like Mark Andrews versus Cooper Kupp.
Andrews.
Right. So, yeah. I mean,
Andrews or AJ Brown. Andrews gives you an extra starter. Pitts doesn't right now. Andrews gives you like an extra starter, as does Kelsey, but I understand why he's not in this conversation.
I've got to go update my rankings. I feel like after this conversation, they're going to need some freshening up. Pitts and Andrews are the top 2 guys. Tight end 3 is Travis Kelsey. He's certainly played well this year. Once again, the age is a factor in his dynasty value, but he just keeps producing. I think these next 2 guys are kind of interesting though, Matt. It's the same 2 that it's been for over a year now. It's George Kittle at tight end 4, Darren Waller at tight end 5. But unlike Kelsey, they're not really producing. Kittle missed some time with an injury, came back. He's been blocking a little bit more, but mostly he's just not been producing. And Darren Waller, the same thing. We wondered what that offense would look like with Devontae Adams there, and how much would that hurt Renfro? How much would it hurt Waller? Well, in most weeks, it's hurt quite a bit.
Oh yeah. I don't have a lot of faith in either one of these guys right now.
I don't either. I don't know that anybody else is coming up from the next group to knock them off yet, but it feels like Kittle and Waller are slowly, extending the gap that Kelsey has on them. So, I mean, it's Pitts and Andrews, or Andrews and Pitts as the top 2 guys. Kelsey's in a group all on his own. And I think Kittle and Waller are probably on their own as well. But again, the gap is narrowing to tight end 6 and beyond.
Where Kittle and Waller would fall for me is the same conversation, like comparing them to other wide receivers and running backs. I would choose other positions now quicker than I would have in the offseason.
Yeah, that's fair. Tight end 6, Dallas Goedert. He has played well. Maybe he's the guy to jump ahead of Kittle and Waller.
I like this neighborhood more than I used to, though. Coming up.
Yeah, it feels a little safer, a little friendlier. Mm-hmm. Pat Freiermuth, tight end 7, suffered that concussion on
his
Sunday.
Second, by the way.
I believe it's his 3rd.
It might be his 3rd. Yeah,
I think he had 2 last year as a rookie, and now this one. So that's That's definitely the danger zone. Obviously, it's going to be this year with the way that's kind of under the microscope, and it definitely deserves to be. It's that serious. But that's becoming a concern. At least it is for me. TJ
Hawkinson,
like
my only concern with him, but yes.
Yeah. Well, that offense is not looking that great either.
It's better with Kenny. It's not good, but it's better with Kenny.
It's better. That's true. TJ Hawkinson, tight end 8. David Njoku has made a big rise. He's tight end 9. I would say he deserves that. Has played well for the Browns.
Oh, yeah.
And tight end 10 is Dalton Schultz, falling off after a big 2021 season.
Schultz was never for me. Njoku's really intriguing and deserves to be there. I'm pretty excited to see what Deshaun Watson and Njoku do together. That's not that far away, folks. Njoku could end up being 4 on this list.
Very good point.
Yeah.
That will do it for today. Please make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the Locked On Dynasty channel on YouTube. Remember to follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL, and I'm Ryan MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.